Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Eisenstein. I'm a Basking Ridge resident and a recent college graduate. I'd like to welcome you to this evening's town hall featuring our panel of young voters in conversation with our candidates, Sophia Chadda and Jon Sandler. Our panel will be asking the candidates about local issues and will also be taking questions from viewers. Please enter your questions in the live chat and we will get to those later on. So now, please welcome our candidates for Township Committee, Sophia Chadda and Jon Sandler. Good to see you both.
Hey, good to see you, Alex.
Thank you for listening.
Of course. Now let's bring in our panel for this evening. Please welcome Richa Amin, David McMillan, Ashwath Subramanian, and Patrick Jotz. Richa, let's start with you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richa Amin, and I'm a Ridge senior, and I'm also the BT Dems Civic Scholarship recipient.
Great. And David?
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dave McMillan. I'm a senior at the College of New Jersey. I'm the president of the College Democrats of New Jersey, which is the college arm of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee, and I'm glad to be on this call.
Wonderful. Ashwath?
Hi, everyone. I'm a graduate of Ridge High School in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. I'm currently a freshman at New York University studying public policy and economics.
Great. And Patrick?
Hello. I'm currently a senior at Ridge, and I also work on Congressman Tom Malinowski's Youth Advisory Council.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.
So I will start with a question for Jon. I was a resident assistant for 3 years in college. We received continuous training almost every month in which we evaluated our own personal bias and furthered our education in how race, diversity, and mental health impact our role in protecting and caring for our community. So as RAs, we were taught that race and diversity are huge components to crisis intervention and to being a protector of the community. Many of us believe intersectionality and anti-racism require continuous education and reevaluation. So my question is, what are your thoughts on ensuring our local police department remains vigilant when it comes to eliminating potential bias and ensuring equal treatment regardless of race, class, religion, or sexual orientation?
It's a great question, Alex, and thank you for asking it. Let me start by saying that I think I speak for Sophia and I when I say that we are huge supporters of the Burnett Township Police Department. I think they're a very vital part of our community, and we've been fortunate thus far as I'm aware of, that there have not been any incidents that I've heard about where there have been accusations with respect to Burnett Township police officers. Now, that said, I think in all walks of life, in anything you do, it's important periodically to take a step back and review policies and procedures and protocol and make sure that everything is being done properly. I know that some police departments locally, I believe even Bedminster, are conducting audits where they're having outside auditors come in and review the policies and procedures of the police department, where they talk about diversity and inclusion, making sure that everything is done appropriately, that everyone is treated equally, to ensure that there aren't any incidents that occur. And I personally would support that, not as any sort of indictment or accusation against the Burnett Township Police Department, but just as a good measure going forward to ensure that the good work of the police department can continue and that the police department can continue to be good neighbors and good partners with the community.
Great. And our next question is from Richa.
So my question is for Sophia. My question regards to the safety of our township. So Bernards Township was a victim of a ransomware attack this year. So in order to avoid future incidents such as this, how will you ensure the safety and security of the residents in Bernards Township?
So that's a great question and very timely. We had a ransomware attack on our township website, as you stated. And the first thing that I would do is to ensure that our township website is secure. And I'm not sure that it is. This simple safety measure can be achieved by a low monthly fee of probably around $15, whereby we can have a secure website to prevent this from happening. In addition to that, I think that it would be helpful if we had our township website attached to a better, bigger server, something like Verizon, for example. That would help. And basically ensuring that our data is safe.
Great. And our next question is from Patrick.
Hello. So my question is, I'm an avid hiker, and during the pandemic, I was taking frequent walks, usually every day around town, and noticed that a lot of streets are lacking sidewalks and proper ways to get around as pedestrians. So how will you, as a candidate, take on the issue of a lack of sidewalks and make sure that it's easy to get around town as a pedestrian?
Who's that question for?
John.
That's for John.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Patrick. I've got 2 young kids. Well, geez, I have 3 young kids. I can't believe I forgot my daughter that was born 4 weeks ago. But my and something I've talked about regularly is concern for their safety. They love to play outside. They love to ride their bikes. And I've always been a little bit surprised at the lack of sidewalks in town, and also the condition of the sidewalks in town, in addition to lack of streetlights and other things. As members of the township committee, I think that we'll have the opportunity to take a look at the condition of the sidewalks to see where they're broken, where they can be replaced. I think it's a challenge to say we're going to add new sidewalks, but it's certainly something you can look at. I think that, as township committee members, it's our priority to make sure that our residents and particularly our kids are as safe as they can be. And if that means, spending a little bit of money to the extent we have to ensure that our sidewalks are safe, and to talk about how we can add other lighting, perhaps widen existing sidewalks, perhaps look to add sidewalks where they don't exist. I would 100% be on board with that.
Our next question is from Ashwath for Sophia.
Sorry, I was on mute. I wanted to ask about your position regarding the construction of new housing projects and initiatives in Basking Ridge, and just generally, what do you think? Would you support the construction of new housing or oppose it, and why?
So I guess you're referring to our affordable housing mandates. Perhaps, as you know, we have an obligation to provide affordable housing, and that's an obligation that we want to meet for sure. However, we want to do it in a mindful way, in a proactive way, so that we don't end up with huge developments all over town that are going to destroy the beautiful character of Bernards Township. A lot of deals have been completed in the past and were not favorable to the township because the township, due to lack of proper planning, had to accept what is called builder's remedy. And we want to prevent that. So I think the best course of action is to be proactive, to start thinking now for 2025, and start coming up with ideas as to how to provide and meet and fulfill these mandates.
And our next question is from David for John.
John, would you be open to working with the Board of Education to solve some of the traffic congestion that is there every morning outside of Ridge High School if elected?
100%. I know that that's a big sense of frustration. I know the traffic can back up from Ridge High School down Finley, basically to Stop and Shop. And it can take people 15, 20 minutes just to get into the high school. And I think that's, fairly unacceptable. It certainly presents a number of challenges. First and foremost, I believe Finley is a county road, so there would have to be some liaising with the county. But yeah, I don't know exactly, what to do, but there are measures that can be put in place. Staggered drop-off times, considering other methods of entry to the school. I know there's another road in the back. I think that's affiliated with the police department, so I'm not sure we could use that. But I think the fact that traffic backs up the way it does, and the fact that not only it affects students, but it affects people trying to get to work and people trying to get around town, it's an issue that does need to be addressed because it's not going to go away on its own.
Great. I have a question for Sophia. As a young resident living in Basking Ridge and prior to the pandemic, there aren't many local businesses that attract younger residents, like bars, restaurants, or events like a farmer's market. As we move out of the pandemic, what are your thoughts on a monthly or weekly farmer's market consisting of local businesses, since buying local is important to a lot of young folks?
I agree. And for me, I prefer to buy local if possible. I know that Bedminster has a farmer's market and Bernardsville has a farmer's market. We have two farms here. We have English Farm and we have Dogwood Farms that have really nice produce. What we could do is try to combine possibly with our neighboring towns and have some sort of farmer's market where we can bring in artisanal goods, and people from different areas can come and bring their goods to sell. I would definitely support that. I think anything that we can do to attract people to the area and as well as bring businesses in town would be something really nice for residents.
And our next question is from Richa for Jon.
Hi, Jon. So my question is, as a person of color in Basking Ridge, I believe there is a need to ensure inclusion of all races and ethnicities in the area. So how would a Human Rights Advisory Committee help diversity and inclusion within Bernards Township?
Thank you for that question. I think it would help in a huge way. I was at the Township Committee meeting when the Human Relations Advisory Committee was first brought up for a public work session. The resolution drafting the framework for the advisory committee was drafted by Committeewoman Joan Harris. And frankly, I was completely and totally shocked that the majority of the Township Committee at that time had indicated that they were not inclined to act and create a Human Relations Advisory Committee. To me, it was completely perplexing. There were over 30 public comments that came in email. A number of people spoke in person at the meeting, including myself. And it just seemed to me to be a no-brainer. And the fact that the Township Committee, a majority of them acted the way they did, to me seemed completely tone deaf and totally out of touch with what the community wants. And as Township Committee members, that's your mandate, that's your job. You're elected to enact the will of the people. You are the government, you're the governing body, and you are the elected officials to ensure that what's important to your residents is also important to you. And that certainly didn't happen that night. Now, ultimately, since then, there has been changing of the tides a little bit. And I think a lot of that had to do with blowback in terms of letters to the editor. And I think some of the Township Committee members didn't necessarily, who weren't in favor of it initially, didn't expect the pushback that they got. And there was a great deal of pushback. And so now it appears as though there is going to be a Human Relations Advisory Committee or something to that effect formed by the Township Committee. And if you look at the framework that was drafted by Joan Harris, it included a number of different people who would be part of the committee, including the police chief or his designee, young people. I believe it included high school students. It included members of the clergy. It included the superintendent or his designee. So the purpose of the committee would be to bring stakeholders representative of the entire town into one room together to talk about the challenges of ensuring that all of our residents feel safe and welcome in Bernards Township. And initially the pushback from some of the Township Committee members was that somehow a committee was too formal, and there was a push for something less formal like a forum. But in my mind, that's simply not good enough. I think you want the formality of a committee that has the ability to act. A committee can form a forum on its own. It can make formal recommendations to the township committee, whereas a forum or some less formal group wouldn't have that sort of power. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully a human relations advisory committee or something with a similar goal is going to be created in the short term that will hope to ensure that everyone in Burnett Township feels welcome, and that the diverse voices are brought to the table. And I understand that that's going to be on the township committee agenda in the next meeting or two, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Our next question is from Patrick for Sophia.
Hello. So I know a lot of people recently, especially with the pandemic and all, have been looking to get involved, especially locally. So how would you look to expand rec activities in the town, both outdoor and indoor?
Hi, Patrick. Great question. So it's been really tough for young people during the pandemic. It's tough being inside, not being able to see your friends, not being able to do the usual activities. I know right now the library has a teen center and they have some really great teen programming. They have stuff like a cooking night, they have a game night, they have an outdoor painting night. So they have a lot of good activities, but I think what we could do is set up a youth advisory board to really find out what specific activities teens are interested in having. And then we could liaison with the Parks and Recs to implement these programs. And right now we have a lot of sports programs, but not everybody necessarily wants to do that. So we could add other things like, a chess event or painting events or video game events, some things of that nature. So I think setting up an advisory board with teens to get some ideas would be really great.
Our next question is from Ashwath for Jon.
Hi, so I wanted to ask again about generally transparency in Burnett Township. As an elected official, how would you go about ensuring that Burnett Township residents are aware of the discussions you have and the choices you make that govern our town? And especially regarding financial disclosures?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's so important as township officials to ensure transparency. And there are measures that can be taken that aren't taken now. I know, for example, our budget was at one point on the town website. I know it's a little bit difficult to find. I think that could be simplified. I think that could be broken down in a way that everyone can understand. I think that, as a township committee person, if elected, one of the things I would pledge to do is have office hours, or have a monthly or a bi-weekly coffee where I would let people know where I'm going to be and encourage people to come stop in. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what's important to you, and we can have a discussion. I haven't seen that level of engagement with our current township committee, and I think it's so important, particularly in this day and age where we want to encourage involvement and we want to encourage participation in local government. And I think, like I said, I think the way you do that is by communicating with people, letting town people know you're available, and of course utilizing the technological infrastructure we have in place in terms of advertising our meetings. I know a lot of that is done now, text alerts, email alerts, and those sorts of things.
Our next question is from David for Sophia.
So I know both of you have spent a considerable amount of time posting online on social media on behalf of businesses and helping to drive local economic growth. What inspired you to do that, especially in the midst of the pandemic when these businesses were struggling?
So last year, as you may know, I visited over 100 businesses in town, and being a business owner myself, this is what inspired me to reach out to other businesses to find out what their needs were, what their concerns were. And we gathered a lot of data last year speaking to these businesses. My goal was to my goal still is to develop an economic development commission, to bring all the players large and small, everyone from Verizon to our mom and pop shops, to the table and come up with a strategic plan to stimulate our economy with immediate short-term and long-term goals. Some of the ideas that we had last year that we also have this year include things like a restaurant week, outdoor dining, an open mic night, outdoor shopping, things of that nature. There are a lot of people that live and work in Bernards Township. So people that work here that don't necessarily live here can spend an evening in Bernards Township. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but when things improve, it would be great to have those people spend time in Bernards Township instead of just, going to work and then going home. So we, came up with a lot of great ideas, and some of the concerns that businesses had last year are even more magnified due to the COVID-19 situation. So right now we're really trying to support our local businesses because they need our help. And without them, our town really loses its character, its flavor. So much of what makes Bernards Township special is and are our local businesses. So we want to support them as much as possible because they have and are suffering from the pandemic.
Jon and Sophia, whoever, can you talk a bit more about your priorities if you get elected?
I'll take a stab at it first, and then Sophia, certainly feel free to jump in. Ashwath really hit the nail on the head. I think that being effective township committee members and being effective leaders in town, really the first step is making sure that you're engaging your constituents and making sure that you're approachable to your constituents and making sure that the needs and concerns of the township residents are of paramount importance to you. One of the things that surprised me was, initially when COVID-19 hit, all the township committee meetings were put over Zoom. And so the township committee had no choice but to accept public comment by email. And then for the very first township committee back, where they were back in the building, very first meeting, they accepted public comment over email as well. And frankly, that was the meeting where the Human Relations Advisory Committee came up, and there was a huge engagement on that level through email. But since then, public comment has stopped, and now you have to go to a meeting to make a public comment. And I don't think that's fair. I think you're forcing members of the community to choose between concerns over their health, safety, and well-being, to choose between that and engaging in local government. One of my first orders of business would be to encourage accepting public comment again by email. I think making a public comment shouldn't be a reward for being able to get out of your house on a Tuesday night. There are plenty of folks that just can't make it out of their house to get to a meeting that really have something important to say, or a question for the township committee that they would like to have entertained and answered. And so, yeah, one of my priorities would be making sure that local government is transparent and accessible to all of our residents.
So our property taxes keep increasing and our home values are decreasing. I want to ensure that Bernards Township remains the premier place where people want to live, work, shop, bring their business, raise their children. And so we need to have some ideas about how to do this. So one of my priorities would be to revitalize our business districts for sure. But what we also need are different voices and diverse voices. So that is one of my goals too, is bringing more people to the table, trying to encourage more inclusivity. This election that's coming up is perhaps the most, and we said that about the last election, but this is perhaps the most important election of our lifetime. And, not since the election of 1860 have we seen two competing visions for the future of this country. So it's really important that we have new faces on the township committee. Jon and I really work hard to do our best to make this the best township it can be.
Well, that is about all the time we have for this evening. So I want to thank our panelists. You've all asked some really great questions. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Jon and Sophia, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. We really appreciate it.
And we have some ballots arriving in mailboxes soon. So make your voice count, especially young voters out there. Make it count.
And one more thing, Sophia and I were instructed to plug, is that we're having coffee on the candidates Saturday morning from 8:30 to 9:30 at Dunkin' Donuts in the Hills, where we'll be sitting outside, buying everybody a cup of coffee and ready to chat about what's important to you. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Please join us. We look forward to meeting you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely night.